Hey Summoners, welcome to another episode of Pro Counters, where we go over some picks you'll need to counter the meta. 9.24 is a great patch with many changes, so it should come as no surprise that some new picks have found their way into the spotlight. Nevertheless, some familiar ones are still sticking around, and we're here to help you counter all of them. Stay tuned because we're covering picks in every role. For our question of the day, what are some tips that you have for countering your main champion? One of the champions I like to play a lot is Blitzcrank, and I find that one of the hardest counters when Morgana isn't picked is to simply push the wave in. Under a minion wave disadvantage, I find it really difficult to find good opportunities to try and pull my enemy. Are you guys getting ganked in your own lane? Constantly demolished? Don't worry, we got you covered. ProGuides is the #1 proven way to quickly help you level up your League of Legends skills. Whether you're looking for tier lists, champion guides, coaching, or courses from your favorite pro players, ProGuides is where you'll find them. Even players like Nightblue, Bunny Fufu, Loco Doco support ProGuides. So what are you waiting for? Click the link to start improving right now. Alright, let's get started with the video. Top. Starting off this episode is none other than Fiora. She's a pretty well-known counter pick, and it's absolutely necessary that you add her to your top lane arsenal, considering how strong Mordekaiser is at the moment. She's also great into other picks like Aatrox, Aurelia, and Kled, who are rather popular. Fiora is a champion who has all the tools necessary to outplay her enemy. She has sustain, high mobility, her parry, and a game-changing ultimate. All of these champions rely on some ability that has a crowd control component, so punish this with parry and proceed to stomp them into the ground. Fiora applies a lot of pressure in side lanes, especially when she can find herself in these winning matchups and abuse her enemies. When she gets ahead, she can continue to starve out her foes and continue to grow stronger. Once she pulls far enough ahead, her opponents are forced to either continue feeding or group up with their team. In either case, Fiora can continue taking turrets and force her opponents to react in some way. Since she should win these counter matchups decisively, her direct opponents should also have significantly less impact in teamfights. Rengar. Rengar top is a pick that's becoming much more popular, especially following changes to Conqueror. If you hate playing against Fiora like many of us do, he's also a great counter pick to her. Rengar deals a ton of damage and heals back a lot of the damage he takes with his W. We suggest picking him into Mordekaiser, Fiora, Aatrox, Gangplank, and Kayle. Especially when laning, Rengar can apply a lot of pressure on his enemy since he has access to the brushes in the top lane. The insane bonus damage Conqueror provides makes Rengar's Q absolutely devastating at the moment, so you'll want to look for heavy trades and all-ins to apply pressure against your opponents. One kill is all it takes, so make sure to take any leads you find and run with them. Feel free to build some Doran's Blades as well while you're transitioning into your final items, as they can help you snowball even harder. Later into the game, Rengar does what he usually does. He presses R and picks off enemies or dives straight for the back line and one-shots his prey. Here are those top lane builds again as we check out the jungle next. Jungle. Nunu is our first jungle pick because alongside Willem, he's giving a lot of these meta picks a hard time. He held very promising win rates against Lee Sin, Echo, Kha'Zix, Olaf, Kayn, and Elise last patch, who altogether held a significant number of games played. Nunu effectively either outscales or neutralizes a lot of these picks because he gets too tanky and can also topple over a lot of their early game pressure. Since a lot of these champions like to snowball early game ganks into either Dragon or Rift Herald, it's no surprise that Nunu finds a lot of success versus them. For one thing, his presence alone can discourage enemies from trying to start up Dragon, since he can jump in and yoink them away. When they commit, they risk having to 50-50 with Nunu, which is more like 90-10 honestly. As the game progresses, he just gets too tanky and provides a lot of well-needed utility for his teammates. Vi. Vi is another jungle pick who has found a lot of success as a counter pick to other champions like Rengar, Graves, Evelynn, and Nidalee. The reason for this is that Vi deals damage and is also quite tanky. Against ranged champions like Nidalee and Graves, Vi's double gap closers make her a lethal threat whenever she catches them out of position. If she can land Q, she'll be ready to start beating the snot out of her opponents, forcing them to use an escape to get out. After this, Vi can simply follow up with her ultimate to secure kills. What I like about Vi is that she's not that difficult, but she provides a lot. She has damage, reliable crowd control, and is also kinda tanky. Overall, I'd say she's a champion who isn't the best at one thing, but above average at many different things, leading to her being a pretty great pick in many scenarios. You can feel free to blind pick her, but you'll find more success picking her as a counter. We want you to take a look at these jungle builds on the screen one last time. Next up, let's move on to the mid lane. First up for mid laners is Vel'Koz. Vel'Koz's high range, insane wave clear, and excellent damage make him an excellent counter to many popular mid laners who suffer in the range department. While Vel'Koz may be susceptible to solo kills or ganks, you can run barrier and focus on vision control to help mitigate this. Another reason is that in solo queue, jungle pressure may or may not play a factor into the lane matchup. In an isolated 1v1, if you can land your abilities, having a range advantage should net you a win. Vel'Koz has great wave clear and an excellent early to mid game. Especially since the current state of the game relies so much on neutral objectives, Vel'Koz is able to carry fights when they matter most. His late game isn't bad by any means either, so don't misunderstand. Part of why Vel'Koz is strong is again because of the heavy emphasis on neutral objectives. The geography of the map around these heavily favors Vel'Koz's abilities, since the spaces are tight and open up opportunities to easily hit many opponents at once. Our next mid lane pick is one we've mentioned many times before. Malphite, in spite of some AP ratios nerfs in the past, is still a dominant counter to AD champions such as Zed, Yasuo, Talon, Qiyana, and Aurelia. We know a lot of you mid laners can't stand playing against physical damage champions, so if you've ever got the counter pick, just remember that we told you to lock in Malphite. Laning is very straightforward. You max Q and poke your enemy over and over again. If they engage on you, you can cast your E and continue to fight them if you're strong enough to win. Otherwise, back off and continue spamming Q. As you transition later into the game, you should have enough damage to all in your opponent after getting some poke off. Otherwise, look for picks on other enemies, since a full AP build will give you enough damage to almost full to zero an enemy. Take a look at those mid lane builds one more time, guys, because we gotta move on to the bot lane now. Bot. Kicking off the bottom lane, we have Ashe. We mentioned her so many times in this series, both before and after the buff she received that made her meta. The reason Ashe is a great counter pick is because she has long range and crowd control. In one way or another, she has answers to punish most other marksmen. I know a lot of you guys struggle to play against Caitlyn, so I'll suggest Ashe to you guys for her. Ashe has pretty long range, so it's a lot harder for Caitlyn to get that free auto attack poke she's used to getting. You can trade auto for auto, and if you can manage to dodge her Q, you can eventually win out in longer trades. Whenever she doesn't stand in her minion wave, look to hit her with a W since it'll heavily outrange her. Once you hit level 6, look for all-ins in any matchup, as your ultimate really opens up a lot of opportunities to pick up some cheeky kills. A tip while playing her is to make sure you scout out the enemy jungle with your hawk shot. Try to go deep and have your hawk shot fly through camps while also ending at whatever camp you want it to. This will give you the most information and allow you to adjust your play accordingly to what you find out. Next up for bot laners is Jinx. With the prevalence of Caitlyn, we also wanted to shout out another option just in case Ashe isn't an option. Jinx also does pretty well into many other popular picks like Kai'Sa, Lucian, Ezreal, Vayne, and Xayah. This is because, like Caitlyn, Jinx holds a pretty sizable range advantage against most of them. At the same time, her scaling and laning phase isn't something to take for granted either. Players who aren't familiar with Jinx tend to really underestimate her all-in potential since they consider her to be a late-game champion. Well, newsflash guys, a lot of strong late-game champions can still be pretty powerful in the early game as well. Jinx gains a bunch of attack speed from her minigun and has two abilities that provide some extra damage and crowd control. While they're avoidable, practice and throwing them out based on factors such as what your support does, the angles your opponents are running at, or cutting them off from walls can allow you to land Jinx's abilities more consistently. Part of why I think Jinx finds so much success is that solo queue games can get chaotic and stall out for a while. In other cases, random kills or random teamfight wins come out of the blue. Jinx can snowball really hard and gets exceptionally stronger with her items, so just getting a little bit of gold or time to scale up can give her the opportunity to pop off and carry games. We're going to show you guys those bot lane builds one more time, so make sure to check them out as we move on to support. Support, Shaco. For our first support counter pick, we want to mention Shaco. This guy is super annoying, and part of why he finds so much success is that people just don't know how to counter him. He scales pretty well, especially in solo queue where his damage and gimmicky kit can really take advantage of foes who tend to make bonehead mistakes. The reason Shaco counters so many aggressive supports like Thresh, Leona, Nautilus, Pyke, and Morgana is for two reasons. One, he's able to poke them down with his E, and two, he's so difficult to punish because he can get out using his Q. When his opponents want to play aggressively and punish him, they always have to be wary of walking into a nest of jack-in-the-boxes. No matter how tanky they are, there's basically no way they'll be able to beat Shaco if he's managed to set up a trap. After all, people usually don't fall into traps expecting to win. Shaco support has been gaining a lot of popularity, which I think really shows how potent of a pick he is. However, he does get countered by supports who specialize in defense or sustain, such as Janna or Soraka. This is likely because they can neutralize him later into the game and run his mana bar out during the lane phase. As a result, they're usually fine avoiding traps and going for stalemates. I heavily suggest you guys only pick Shaco as a counter pick if you want to maximize your LP gains. There are plenty of other supports who can be effective regardless of lane matchup. Our next pick is one of my all-time favorites, Zyra. A famous hard carry support pick by many, Zyra is an excellent answer to meta picks such as Thresh, Senna, Morgana, Pyke, and Rakan. Especially after those Senna nerfs, you shouldn't hesitate to pick up Zyra against her. Zyra is one of the few supports who can challenge Senna's long range and also forces her to use a lot of her mana to heal herself back up. What makes Zyra great against most picks, however, is the fact that she can continuously poke and also disengage whenever her opponents want to scrap. Especially after 6, these hard engages are ill-advised if they aren't executed perfectly. Zyra deals a lot of damage, and the zone control she provides with her plants alongside her ultimate can be devastating. Another thing to note about Zyra is her excellent scaling. She does excellent damage with a combination of Liandry's Torment and Rylai's. Her crowd control and disengage continue to act as impactful defensive as well as offensive options depending on what happens. While Zyra can do pretty well into picks like Thresh and Pyke, this is because her plants can impede their attempts to land a skill shot. Support like Leona, who can ignore crowd control and jump into the mix, can take out Zyra instantly. So again, she's a much safer counter pick, but can definitely be justified as a pick if your team needs some more damage or disengage. One more time as we wrap up this video, check out those support builds on the screen. That concludes this episode of OP Counters. Thank you guys for watching. If you want to see more content like this or a ton of helpful content related to gameplay, check out our YouTube channel as well as ProGuides.com, where we've teamed up with professional players to design the best content to help you improve. Good luck out there on the Rift, and we hope to see you all next time.